Sissonville, West Virginia. I've never heard of the place, but nonetheless, I don't talk about West Virginia very often. But in this case, we're going to talk about these two people. We got a couple of terms in the chat. I don't know if they're going to apply or not, but we got some pretty unique names over here that we like to call people who hurt, murder, and abuse children, okay? Let me give you a disclaimer because maybe you've never been to my channel before. Some viewers may find the following content offensive and controversial. The information in this video comes from multiple sources, including court records, official police charges, news web articles, and interviews. This video commentary also contains my personal opinions about the facts of this story. The point is to use this story as a cautionary tale in hopes of preventing tragedies like these to children going forward. Viewer discretion is advised. That is your official disclaimer. And I have a little bit of a source for information on this story. I don't know if it's credible or not, but I'm going to take it as credible. I'm going to just give the information and you guys tell me what you think if you find something otherwise. But I think what I'm going to say might pique your interest just a little bit, how wild this story is. Okay? Hashtag when you date hoodbillies, you date death. Hashtag hoodbillies. These people are just horrible people, okay? So I'm getting this story from WCHSTV.com. Thank you foremost for the article. Let's talk about this. A Sissonville, West Virginia couple accused of human trafficking after children were found allegedly locked in a barn appeared in court on Tuesday. And I actually have that 911 call. Y'all might find that interesting. The people who called in and told on them. Donald Ray Lantz, Lantz, 63 years old. Let's see. On the right-hand side of the screen, and let me see, Jean K. Whitefeather, 62 years old, pleaded not guilty to charges of human trafficking of a minor child, use of a minor child in forced labor, child neglect, creating substantial risk of serious bodily injury or death, and false swearing. Let's go back to one key charge. Use of a minor in forced labor. What does that sound like to y'all? What does forced labor sound like? What is that terminology that we used to use in America 100 plus years ago? You guys remember? Forced labor is also referred to as what? Slavery. Bookmark that. We'll come back to it. I got an email pulled up here. I'm not going to read the lady's full name. We'll come back to it. Because what she wrote me is interesting that sent me this story. Judge Mary Claire Akers said that this case is one of the worst indictments she's seen in her time on the bench, and she believes the current bond was not sufficient, pushing it to $500,000, $500,000 each. I don't think I've seen an indictment like this in all my time. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race and their use of as basically slaves, from what the indictment alleges, along with human trafficking and neglect with serious bodily injury or death, Akers said. I don't find the bond to be sufficient. Sissonville. And somebody in the chat says that they don't like black people in Sissonville. Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't give a shit about Sissonville, and I don't give a damn about West Virginia in general. I'm not going to show my black ass up there. I'll tell you that. But I'm going to just tell you, just looking at them, I don't know why that lady on the right-hand side of my screen, like she just has one of those familiar looking faces. Maybe I met her in Oklahoma or something. I don't know. She just got a very familiar looking face. Like they just look like assholes. Somebody in the chat says, I'm from Sissonville. So I need you to confirm in the chat. Is that what it's like there? Can you confirm that? Somebody in the chat said that this place does not like black people. Is that true? Please type it in the chat, because I have to take y'all word for it. I'm going to read some of this again. Human rights violations, forced labor, and they were targeted because of their race. Remember when I told y'all before that it seems like we were less racist in the 90s? Ladies and gentlemen, this is 2024 and we still got racist son of a bitches out here who are kidnapping people and treating them like actual slaves in 2024? Really? Let's take a pause on the story and let me read y'all what the email actually said that came from a source that's not in the chat. A different source. She said, and I quote, "I forgot to tell you yesterday that these people adopted the that the adopted children are black and they use them as slaves." I reply and I say, "Wow, that is interesting. I'll keep that in mind. How did you find out their race?" They wrote back and said, they only mentioned a 16-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy so far. I live less than 5 miles away from Sissonville. It's a city here in West Virginia where blacks are not welcome. What the fuck type of stuff is that? In 2024? That's completely insane. That's the best way to summarize this. Blacks are not welcome in 2024. Can y'all believe that? Her last name is a Native American surname. Isn't that something? Whitefeather. My mother's side of the family is Native American. That is interesting. West Virginia, where blacks aren't welcome. Sissonville. They have their own grades. So blacks have their own grade school, middle school, and high school. And more information becomes available. I will send it to you. Not sure if I mentioned this before or not. The judge found out that they adopted the black kids to make them their slaves. Pause right goddamn there. Pause. When you say some suspect stuff, what do we say? Pause. That's suspect. So pause right there. And I want y'all to catch what they just said. The judge found out that they adopted the black kids to make them their slaves. What is the predicate term? The predicate term, adopted. How were they able to adopt kids? That means that these kids have either been taken or have been given up by the parents, biological mother, biological father, for whatever freaking reason. That means that there was a failure of the black biological mother and black biological father who clearly didn't have a plan and made these kids, weren't able to take care of them, or got their kids took from being so messed up that they ended up in the system and lost the kids. And even on top of that, that means that no family members of these black kids came to adopt them. That means nobody else gave a shit about these kids. And then they were taken advantage of by these people because these children were available. Now do we see the bigger picture? That means that these children should have never been in a position to be taken. Yes? They should have never been in the position. to be taken. On top of that, these people saw an opportunity, took advantage of it, and I think that these people should never see the light of day ever again. But that's not completely the end of it. This lady also said they had them doing hard labor before a concerned neighbor notified CPS and the police. Prosecutor in Kanawha County previously expressed concerns that the $200,000 cash bonds that the husband and wife previously posted were obtained from profits of trafficking, which means there's a market, which means there are more participants, which means why aren't they getting investigated and arrested also? In recent court filings in the case, Kanawha County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Christopher something, God, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, called the cash posted to secure the couple's release in February contraband directly or indirectly used or intended for use to facilitate a violation of human trafficking laws. He went on to say that the money constitutes or was derived from gross profits or other proceeds obtained by breaking the law. Following their arrest last fall, the couple requested a court-appointed attorneys and indicated in an affidavit that they have no income, assets, expenses, or dependents. Whitefeather later hired Mark Plants to represent her. On February 2nd, the county assistant prosecuting attorney said that the couple sold an 80-acre ranch in Tonasket, Washington for $725,000. Good Lord. 3 days later, Marcus Hughes, Whitefeather's brother, posted two bonds of $200,000 to secure their release from the South Central Regional Jail. I think y'all need to investigate him too. On March 28th, the county assistant prosecuting attorney, because I cannot pronounce his last name, said that the couple sold the Sissonville home on Cheyenne Lane where they were arrested while living with their 5 children for $295,000. The attorney believes the money, which remains in the custody of the Kanawha County Circuit Court's clerk office, is owned by the couple and should be transferred into a trust for the children. And I agree with that. Prosecutors contend that even if the $400,000 total came from a legitimate source, based on the totality of the circumstances in this case, the money was intended to be used for human trafficking and forced labor. Whitefeather and Lance were arrested after a child welfare call by a neighbor claimed 2 teenagers were being locked in a shed at the couple's Sissonville home. Whitefeather previously alleged that the barn was a teenage clubhouse and that the children were not locked inside. Neighbors also reported that the children were forced to perform farm labor and were not permitted inside the residence. Man, if that ain't 100, 200, 300, 400 years backwards, I don't know what is. Deputies said that they found a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old locked in an outbuilding equipped with only a small RV porta potty but no running water. The 16-year-old girl told law enforcement that they were last given food around 6 a.m. that day and had been confined in the locked outbuilding for 12 hours. The children told deputies that Whitefeather and Lance forced the 2 teens to sleep in the locked outbuilding on the concrete floor without any mattress or other padding. Deputies also noted that the 2 teens wore dirty clothes and smelled of body odor. The 16-year-old girl had shoes, while the 14-year-old boy had open sores on his bare feet. Can y'all believe we're talking about something going on in 2024? We have somebody in the chat, and I do appreciate the super chat that said that this person is lying. The kids were white, and they were their kids and lots of blacks here. And I get that. Look, and I definitely appreciate you speaking out. I think we need to definitely try to figure out really because look, in order for us to really, really find out what's going on, it would mean that we would have to know the actual identity, which we want to try to protect these children as much as possible. But I've gotten it from a few different sources that actually said that these kids were black. Matter of fact, I want you to understand, and I do appreciate your support, and I know that you mean well. My source and multiple sources, even on WCHSTV.com, is my source. /news /local /Sissonville couple accused of child trafficking plead not guilty, bond raised. Please look up that article, and I want you to understand that this is what they say, and I quote. This is coming from Judge Mary Claire Akers. Her words. Judge Mary Claire Akers. Let me see if I can get her face up on the screen. I want to show you. Judge Mary Claire Akers. Wow, that came up real quick. All right, let's check this out. Let's do this together. We can do a little investigative journalism. These are your elected officials. Look them up. If there is a way to contact them during business hours, there is contact information for Honorable Judge Mary Claire Akers, State of West Virginia, 13th Judicial Circuit Court, Division 7. Located in Kanawha County Judicial Building, address 111 Court Street, number 425, Charleston, West Virginia, 25301. Phone number is listed there. Google search it. As you can see, this young lady. Uh-oh. Let me see. How do I do this? Oh, is it not coming up no more? Right there. As y'all can see, she's white. Okay? She's a white lady. Her words. So hear me out. These are her words in quotation marks. So tell me where I got this wrong. She said, and I quote, "I don't think I've ever seen an indictment like this in all of my time. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race and their use as basically slaves from what the indictment alleges, along with human trafficking and neglect with serious bodily injury or death." These are her words. These cannot be white children. When they're saying, and I quote, targeted because of their race. Otherwise, if they were white children, they wouldn't have been targeted for their race. That would either mean that these children are Mexican, black, or some other nationality outside of traditional American white. Slaves targeted because of their race. "14 and 16 years old." And even in the email, before I even pulled up the story, before I even gave my source away, they told me the age of the children and told me their race. That looks to me like a 90% likelihood, 10% that there's a chance for error, but that's looking like 90% that that's accurate. To me, that sounds like either black or Mexican. Let me see if there's any more I can read from this. Deputies said that they found a 9-year-old girl inside the main home 3 hours after law enforcement first arrived at the home. Lance arrived with an 11-year-old boy. Whitefeather came home at about an hour after that and led deputies to a 6-year-old girl who was with acquaintances from the couple's church. A trial for the couple is set for September 9th. It won't be that hard to figure that out. But everything that we have laid before us seems like these were black children. I'm just saying. If we were wrong, then I will issue a retraction. But every bit of that sounds like that's accurate. So we'll see. We'll find out. But nonetheless, what they did was still the kids, and it was still wrong. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without the authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use. It is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107. Let's join in this conversation. Let's be productive about this. And if you guys have information that you end up finding, as long as it's not something that's breaking the law, please be careful what you send me. But you can send me links to news, web articles, and things like that, or even court documents, I think should be okay. But if you're not sure, then just refrain from sending it. But we would definitely like to make sure that we get accurate information. If we need to make retractions, I will. Just need to make sure I have accurate information, okay? Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Let's take a look. We only got a couple news videos.
And now to a WSAZ investigation that we've been telling you about since Tuesday about 2 children deputies say were found locked inside a barn, like an outbuilding in Kanawha County.
And tonight we are learning more about what led to that discovery. And for the first time, we're hearing the 911 call from a neighbor who says they have been repeatedly reporting the problem to CPS. News Channel 3's Kim Rafferty joins us. And Kim, deputies tell us multiple reports have been made.
It's a disturbing discovery, deputies say they made Monday night in the Sissonville area of Kanawha County. Deputies say the 911 call came in at about 5:45 Monday evening. WSAZ has obtained that 911 call, and we have chosen to distort the caller's voice to protect their identity.
But there is a family that we have been calling CPS on multiple times. He has 2 kids locked in an outbuilding. They've been in there for days. They're in that with the red door. It's padlocked. Locked with a padlock? Yes, I've seen him open it, say something to the kids, and I watched him lock it back. The kids are locked in there, and you can't miss it. It's a red, 2 double doors, they're red. They're locked in that, in the barn.
Deputies say they went to the barn after that 911 call, and that is when they found the two teens inside with no access to food, water, a bathroom, bed, and no way out. A couple of hours later, the deputies say these two relatives, Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather, arrived back at the home and were arrested on felony child neglect charges. WSAZ reported that a couple calls were also made on the home at Cheyenne Lane involving abuse of the children that lived there back in May and September. Kanawha County deputies said they investigated those complaints and say the two prior ones were unfounded. The third call, however, Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather were not home, and that is when deputies discovered extreme neglect the children faced. I also spoke with the West Virginia Child Advocacy Network, which works with CPS and law enforcement to investigate allegations of abuse and neglect.
So it's often happening in homes, it's happening in neighborhoods, so neighbors need to look out for each other.
Kate Flack is the CEO of that organization. She says the person that reported the concerns to law enforcement is a hero.
Contacting CPS centralized intake is a great way to start investigations and maintain your anonymity. So if anyone observes an actual crime where a kid is being physically or sexually abused or severely neglected, call 911 if it's happening like then or you just found out about it.
WSAZ has reached out to the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources to find out more about the process for reporting, how many reports were made on the home on Cheyenne Lane in the last year, and how quickly cases are investigated after the caller's initial report. In Kanawha County, Kim Rafferty, WSAZ News Channel 3.
Now, we will keep reaching out to DHHR for more information about this child neglect case.
Eyewitness News at 5 starts right now.
The Sissonville couple accused of human trafficking and forced labor were back in court today. This is the case where Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather were arrested after deputies found their adopted teens locked in a barn last fall in Sissonville. But as Anna Saunders explains, today's hearing was focused on their financial situation as prosecutors consider some of their money illegal.
That's right, Gina. As new charges of human trafficking, forced labor, and civil rights violations stacked up against Whitefeather and Lance, so did their bond amount, as they are now back in jail on $500,000 cash bonds each. But the matter addressed in court today was about the first bond they posted when they were able to put down $400,000 cash back in February. This raised red flags with the prosecution, as they believe that money is contraband and are now looking to have it turned over to the state. It's the prosecution's ultimate goal to seize the $400,000 that Whitefeather and Lance posted for bond in February. The argument is that bonds were paid by selling homes in Washington state and in Sissonville, where human trafficking occurred. But what happened today is Kanawha County Chief Circuit Court Judge Mary Claire Akers signed a protective order for that money, meaning it must stay with the sheriff's office until the courts decide if it will be seized or not.
We're not trying to forfeit the money without due process. We just want to protect it and preserve it until we've had a chance to litigate the claim.
A 16-count indictment was recently returned against Lance and Whitefeather, going far beyond their initial charge of child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from a shelter, targeting them for their race to do forced labor. The complaint said Lance and Whitefeather first 5 black children from 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 5 black children 5 black children 5 black children.
Y'all hear that? Your internet is not messed up. Can everybody in the chat, I don't know who's listening. Who's listening right now? How many people we still got watching? I don't know. Let me take a look. How many people are still listening? What's the race? What's the race? No more guesswork. Because if they're lying, if they're putting out lies, They can be sued for lying. Even the news stations, if they're flat out putting out lies, they can be sued. What's the race?
Initial charge of child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children for initial charge of child neglect.
So they intentionally adopted black. Intentionally, on purpose, with malice. That they planned that. That's indisputable evidence right there. Hello, talk to me. Talk to me. I just want to make sure that we at least get that part down. So if people are putting out other information, like to the young lady, because I know she's a child member, I know she's family here. But to the person who gave you that information, you can at least tell them, okay, now you know that that's not accurate. So that information that they were trying to say, no, these are actually white kids, they were not. They were not, for a fact. But at least now we know, because like I say, I'm just one of those people that I just believe in getting to the bottom of things, getting the facts, and make sure that we put out factual information so we don't have to do retractions. Because I think I've been doing this about, 5 years now? And so far, I don't think I've had to put out one retraction yet. I know one story people wanted me to put out a retraction because this lady got off on murder, but everything we put out there was still based on the charges. So even then, I didn't have to do a retraction for that. 5 black children targeted for their race. So we had context clues there, but now we have facts.
Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from a shelter, targeting them for their race to do forced labor. The complaint said Lance and Whitefeather first had them at this 80-acre ranch in Washington state and then moved to the Sissonville home. This is where deputies, while doing a welfare check last fall, found 2 teenagers locked in a barn in what investigators called deplorable conditions. After they were arrested, the 2 sold the Washington home for about $700,000 and the Sissonville home for about $300,000. Prosecutors believe they used that money for bond.
And the state's position is that these assets were used to maintain and harbor minors in violation of the human trafficking statute. Our position is that's not true, and we look forward to a court in which we can prove otherwise.
So for now, the money is supposed to remain untouched until the court proceedings play out. Whitefeather's defense attorney Mark Plants and Kanawha County Assistant Prosecutor Chris Kavaniak both said seeking forfeiture for human trafficking, though common in federal court, will be uncharted waters for all.
So I would have to agree. Somebody in the chat said they wanted slaves. They wanted black slaves specifically. All I'm saying is I just think that's weird how these people, and maybe there are more people out there that think like they do, and we're in 2024 and we're just like, damn, like, how are we doing that? How do you even feel like that? How do you even behave like that? How do you profit like that in 2024? Why is your mentality like that? Like, why? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to treat a human being as property? Ever. Even back then, even now. 200, 300, 400 years ago, that was the freaking culture. This, for all of us living folks, that has never been our culture, ever. So why would we want to imitate what you've seen in movies? It's not from life experience. Maybe your great-great-grandparents passing some shit down that you may or may not know about. That's just fucking dumb.
in circuit court.
I've never had one in 20 years. The human trafficking statute is relatively new. Chris Kravaniak's the prosecutor. He's formerly a federal prosecutor where they do this all the time. He's very competent, knows what he's doing. But this is an issue of first impression for me, and I think the court. I don't want to. When I looked this up, I couldn't find anything about it, and you notice that Mr. Kravaniak said the same thing, that in state court, this really hasn't been done before.
Now, with this $400,000 now protected, it can't be used at all right now while the protective order is in place. But if the state wins out in this and the forfeiture is granted, it that not only alleges the trafficked black children, adopting them from shelters and foster care, forcing them to work, but that they specifically targeted them because of their race. Black children adopting them from shelters, the trafficked black children adopting them from shelters and foster care, forcing them to work, but that they specifically targeted them because of their race. Jeannie Whitefeather and Donald Lance came in on their own for their arraignments, but left in cuffs after Judge Mary Claire Akers set their bonds at $500,000, more than double what they had already paid.
And I don't think I've ever seen an indictment like this in all of my time. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race, and their use as basically slaves from what the indictment alleges, along with human trafficking and neglect with serious risk of bodily injury or death. I don't find the bond to be sufficient.
Whitefeather and Lance were first arrested last October when a welfare check turned into the discovery of two teens apparently locked in a shed where investigators said they lived in deplorable conditions behind the Sissonville home. One other kid was found inside the house and two others were not home, all adopted by the couple. The indictment brought more than a dozen new charges against them alleging human trafficking and forced labor, also civil rights violations, as investigators believe they targeted these children specifically from a shelter because they were black, forcing them to work as slaves. Whitefeather and Lance were originally in Washington state, and it is alleged they brought the children with them to Sissonville when they moved.
Counts 9 through 12 allege the use of forced labor, which I read as slavery.
Bond was initially set at $200,000 cash, and they were both able to post it. Prosecutors have said in a new complaint for forfeiture, the couple sold a $725,000 80-acre ranch in Washington state and sold their Sissonville home to post bond, and they believe both of these properties were paid for through trafficking. That will be decided in a separate court matter, but because of this, prosecutors say they found discrepancies in the financial affidavit Lance filled out for a court-appointed attorney, leading to a new charge on his indictment.
Some of the information on his face is inaccurate.
Lance had to fill out a new affidavit today as the two were taken back into custody.
I gotta tell y'all, man. I never, with me being 40 plus years old, never thought I'd see the day that I would actually see real live slave owners in my time. I thought that was past us. Never thought I'd see that. I never thought that in 2024, me being 40 plus years old, having a daughter that has lived her whole life and now she's almost grown and watching my baby grow up, that I would ever think to tell her that I did a story recently about people who actually owned slaves in America in 2024 in broad daylight. Man, they got money, they got power, and they clearly had enough money. 200,000, oh, that's nothing. And they got their relatives or whoever it was to bail them out of jail. And then so the judge was like, no. We need to raise that on up, which I agree with. And raise their bail even higher, which is they probably should have gave them a multi-million dollars of bail. Get them to give up all their money. Because why was they trying to get out? Probably to do some more fuck shit. More than likely. I just never thought I'd live to see a day like that. And look, and I'm going to tell you, this don't make me hate white people at all. It's just you have to recognize when you just have stupid ass people. Stupid is a stupid thugs. Hashtag hoodbillies. These people like this. You just have to cast people like this out of society, period. Get rid of the bad apples and just hope that your crop can survive, right? Get rid of the bad apples. These are bad apples. They should never be allowed in our society ever again. And matter of fact, I think every family member that's tied to them, whether it be biological children of theirs, cousins of theirs, they all need to be federally investigated. Because $400,000, $500,000, $1 million, $250,000, $750,000 worth of property, that should be federally investigated at that point. That's big time money. That's big time business. So if there's more that comes of this, we'll probably be doing an update on this story. This is easily one of the more intriguing stories I have ever seen. Keep those children in your prayers, and any other children that were tied to this, keep them in your big time prayers, okay? Thank you guys so much for listening to the AFC. I'm glad we were able to at least get some additional information out there so we can dissect this and find out what's really going on. From my heart to yours, where are their biological parents at? Let's not forget about that, because these kids shouldn't even been in a position to be adopted. We'll come back to that. We'll come back. Thank you guys so much for listening. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. It's weird. Thank you.